The new Soulblight Battle Tome is very nearly upon us. It's going up for pre-order this coming weekend, and I, for one, am super excited about it. I cannot wait to get my hands on it and do a review for you guys. But in the meantime, as per usual, GW have been drip feeding us some hints and teases about what we can expect in this new book. And so today we're going to be taking a look at some of the articles GW has put up this week to see what is new and what cool things we have to look forward to with the Soulblight Gravelords. First up is of course the brand new army box, which is focused on the Death Rattle. It features completely new sculpts for the old Black Knights and Graveguard, which have now been renamed into the Barrow Knights and the Barrow Guard. They both do still seem to be largely similar to the current versions from everything I've seen. There are just a few small changes that make them a bit more interesting and a bit more befitting their cool new names. So the Barrow Knights, they get a rule called Knights of the King, which is a fantastic boost to their own durability as well as that of any Death Rattle cavalry hero that's within their combat range. It gives both of those units a 5-up ward, so your Knights and a Wight King on steed with them can get much more protection from enemy attacks, and this is sort of what the current Graveguard have and what I assume the Barrow Guard will still have in their profile. So they are both of them, the cavalry and the Barrow Guard. They seem to be fitting this profile of this defensive unit to go along with a hero and just give them that extra level of durability and protection. It is, if nothing else, going to mean you have some more models alive or unalive, I guess, when you do reach combat. And this durability is boosted even further to one of their other rules, Cursed to Rise Once More. And what this means is that at the end of any turn, so yours and your opponent's, you can return a slain model to this unit. So when you are stuck in and in combat, this will keep you trucking along just keep grinding that enemy down. But even before you get into combat, if the enemy shoots at you and maybe kills off a couple as you are moving up the board, you can bring a model back at the end of any turn in preparation potentially for a charge in your subsequent turn. So it is just another really good, really strong rule for keeping this unit on the board and on the battlefield for as long as possible. They still seem to keep the same +1 damage on the charge and crit mortals, although the article isn't entirely clear in my opinion if that crit mortals is now still from their current deathly charge rule, so only when they charge, or if it is just on the Lance's now baseline, which would be kind of fitting with what we see on the Graveguard and also on the new Wight King. If that is the case, that would be fantastic because it would make them even better on the charge, obviously, with the +1 damage. But if the crit mortals are all the time, that makes them much more reliable as well in ongoing combats as you just grind down the enemy. Because otherwise these guys, they do run the risk of being quite devastating on the charge, but then really hitting like wet noodles once you are stuck in combat. Also getting a new model is of course that Wight King that I just mentioned. He now has a King's Relic weapon instead of his Tomb Lance. It's still 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend and 2 damage with charge +1 damage and also crit mortals, but it now has 5 attacks rather than 4, so that is a very nice upgrade indeed. He's able to put around nearly 5 damage into a 4-up save unit by himself, so he is quite scary in combat. But even better now, he's got another rule called the Ancient Barrow Curse, and this is a passive that means if he gets a critical hit with his weapon, the enemy unit he gets the hit on is cursed, and they are, for the rest of the battle, then at -1 to their save rolls, so dropping 4-up saves to 5s or 3-up saves to 4s, even the very rare 2-up saves like on things like Skull Crushers, that is going to be dropping them down to 3s, which is a huge hit to their durability. It is just going to make most monsters and characters and units just that much easier to deal with. And it's also important to note this says it's for the rest of the battle, so if you get this off, even if your Wight King then dies, the rest of your army can still benefit from that debuff on the enemy unit. Now in terms of chances, yes, it's only on a critical hit, so it's only on 6s, but with 5 dice from his attacks, that gets you a roughly 58 to 59% chance of rolling at least 1 6 on those dice. so you don't actually have that bad odds of getting this debuff onto an enemy unit really quickly in the game. Like, you have a pretty decent chance to get it off even in the very first battle round if you manage to get a charge off. So that is going to be a really significant boost to your output and basically give you army-wide +1 rend against that enemy unit. So it is very significant. It's going to be a huge problem for anything from Skull Crushers to Chaos Warriors to even Archaon will very much not like having -1 to their saves. So I think the Wight King is going to be very, very good. And with those Barrow Knights backing him up, that is going to be a lot of damage you can smash into the enemy lines very, very quickly. If you instead want some more elite cavalry, then the Mighty Blood Knights could be a good place to start, and leading them is another brand new model. Finally, we are getting a Vampire Lord on a Nightmare, which Death players, myself included, have been begging for ages and ages now, and it is a truly stunning model. I cannot wait to get my hands on one and get them onto the battlefield. But in terms of the rules it brings, they also seem to be fairly good. It's got a lovely reaction for Glory for Blood, which allows you to reroll charges for your Lord, making them already much more reliable at getting into combat. But you can then also, before you make your charge move, pick a friendly Blood Knights unit that is not in combat and that is wholly within 12 inches of your Lord and that hasn't charged, and they can also charge after your Lord has. Now, you can do this even if it isn't your charge phase, so this does explicitly work for things like countercharge, and even better, the third cherry on top is they also get to reroll their charge rolls. So essentially, this ability is getting you 2 charges with rerolls and getting you potentially a 3-second countercharge if you need it. So this ability could, in theory, save you a load of command points on top of just giving you that extra reliability for 2 very powerful units that really do need to get the charge off to be the most effective. So this alone is a really strong, powerful rule that I can see getting used a lot if you've got your Lord with a unit of Blood Knights that you need to get into combat. But the Lord doesn't stop there though, he brings even more to your Blood Knights. He brings them an extra rend if they've charged this turn and are wholly within 12 inches of him with his rule Strike at the Heart. And what that means is that with their Templar weapons, assuming nothing else has changed in the War Scroll, they are now going to be 2 rend or 3 rend against infantry and 2 damage on the charge. So this is going to let them utterly obliterate enemy infantry, and a unit of 5 will be able to do over 11 damage to even something tough like a unit of Chaos Warriors. So they'll be able to kill off 5.5 in a single go. And then of course you've got your horse attacks after that, so they will probably do a few more damage on top. So you could very easily kill 6, maybe even 7 Chaos Warriors in a single activation. And then of course you've got the Lord's attacks as well. So you could quite likely, I think, kill off an entire 10-man squad of Chaos Warriors with a Lord and 5 Blood Knights charging in. Now, of course, to really utilize all of this destruction, there has to be an army of renown to take advantage of it. And there is indeed. The Knights of the Crimson Keep is very, very restrictive. You can only bring Prince Vordrai, a Lord or Nightmare, Blood Knights, and the new Revenant Draconith dragons. But despite having such a limited selection, I do think this army of renown does seem very cool. It gives you the ability to come onto the battlefield in any movement phase 9 inches from any battlefield edge and 9 inches from enemies. Now up to half your army can be kept in reserve to come in this way, so that does give you a lot of your units that extra utility in getting them where you need them to be to best counter the enemy battle plans or score you some victory points. So that is a really good mobility and utility tool. But also, if you bring in a unit on the 3rd battle round, they get to use another cool ability you have for 0 command points. And this is an ability called Carve a Bloody Path. It's usually 1 command point, and it lets a unit of Blood Knights that is in combat essentially charge again. So even though they are in combat, and even if they've already charged that turn, they can charge again, and this is essentially a really easy way to activate their Riders of Ruin ability, so that goes off again, and that allows them to move through enemy infantry when they charge, so you can essentially just hop over an enemy infantry unit you're already in combat with, which can then proc Trampled to Dust for potentially a second time. So your Blood Knights in theory could be doing up to 6 mortal damage to an enemy infantry unit before any fighting has even begun. And then finally we get to the latest article we've had, which is the one today. This is all about the fearsome and very, very cool Caedo Ezekiar and his Regiment of Renown, which is called the Blades of the Hollow King. Now this has already been stated in an earlier article to be fully usable with the Soulblight, which is great, but obviously as a Regiment of Renown this can also be taken in a Nighthaunt, an Ossiarch Bone Reaper, or a Flesh Eater Court list, which is also very handy. And the Blades of the Hollow King, it comprises of Caedo himself, Sisendra and Aurelius, as well as a spooky funky little ghost called Solia. Now Caedo and Sisendra are the melee combatants of the trio, with Caedo having 5 attacks that hit and wound on 3s with 2 rend, 2 damage and crit auto wounds, whilst Sisendra, she's only 1 rend and 1 damage, but she has crit mortals and also a whopping 8 attacks. So between the two of them, they will net you about 7 damage into a 4-up save, or about 5 or 6 damage into a 3-up save, so they can do a good bit of work just between the two of them. But then you also get a really nice combat phase benefit from the ghost Solia, who lets you in any combat phase either pick to give the unit a 5-up ward save, or give Caedo's greatsword the crit mortals rule, which is essentially just a flat upgrade to his usual auto wounds. So they can be, as a regiment or as a trio of units, be really quite durable with that better ward, or just pump out a massive amount of mortal damage with their combined 13 attacks. On top of that melee though, Aurelius, he is the caster of the group. He can choose to cast 2 spells, or he can choose to re-roll a dice when he's casting his spell. So again, you can either make him a bit of a machine gun and just get out as many spells as possible, or just make him that much more reliable caster to make sure the one you need to get off definitely goes off. So it depends how you want to use him, if there's a spell you really do need to get off, or if you just want to kind of get as much out there, as much magic out there onto the board as possible. But they do show off one of the spells that you can access, which is called Retribution or Salvation. And this is cast on a fairly hefty 7+, so having that potential reroll with the cast might be the better option if you wanted to get this off. But this lets you pick a unit within 12 inches of Caedo, and if it is an enemy unit, that unit takes D3 mortal damage, or if it's a friendly Death Rattle or Deadwalker unit, it gets -1 to be wounded for the turn. So turning things like your Barrow Knights and your Barrow Guard into incredibly good anvils, potentially having a 5-up ward save and -1 to be wounded, so they are going to be incredibly tough to keep down, and something like some Barrow Guard with Caedo and his friends coming up alongside them can be super tanky and put out a huge amount of damage into the enemy. Finally, for the preview so far, we've also been shown a second Regiment of Renown. This is the Beast of Castle Sterniest, and this is a monstrous Revenant Draconith. Again, it's able to join the ranks of the Nighthaunt, the Ossiarch, or the Flesh Eater Courts, but this is just one single Draconith, and it seems to be very good at sticking around thanks to a couple of abilities it has. Deathless Monstrosity allows it to heal 3 in each of your hero phases, so being able to just keep itself alive and going even if it is taking some chip damage and getting back up to a good amount of health, so it can just keep fighting and killing and tearing enemies apart in combat. But if you want to do some more utility tricks, it's also got a really good uppy downy ability with Red Ruin. And this, at the end of any turn, allows you to pick an enemy unit you're in combat with your unit, and you roll a d3, and on a 2+, the enemy unit takes that much mortal damage, your monstrous Draconith heals that much damage, and it can then be removed from the battlefield and put up in the air, ready to drop down in your following movement phase. So it's great extra chip damage against an enemy unit, it's some decent healing on yourself, and of course some really solid mobility tricks. So this makes it a very good addition to any death faction, I think, depending of course on how many points it is. So there is a lot that's been covered so far, and it is likely there will be a lot more to be covered either tomorrow or after the pre-orders go up of the weekend. But I would love to know, out of everything we've seen so far, what is making you most excited about this new battle tome? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.